Okay, we are on, Jairam.
श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्। शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। हरिः ओम्। अथ निर्वाणषट्कम्। मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कारचित्तानि नाहम् न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायुः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायुः न वा सप्तधातुर्न वा पञ्चकोशाः न वाक्पाणिपादन्न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे द्वेषरागौ न मे लोभमोहौ मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखम् न मन्थो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञाः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मृत्युर्न शङ्गा न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभुत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणाम् न चासङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेयः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभुत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणाम् न चासङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेयः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् हरिः ओम्।
Josna, are you ready for, are you good for next class to do the opening prayer?
Can't sing at all. I
They
can
can't
only
sing.
okay.
All right, no problem. Let's see who is Narasimha. I don't know if you have got a chance to do. How about you?
Okay, Ramkanji.
Okay, all right. You will give the next time. Okay. We will. So we were discussing in the last class the Jivatma. These were the two verses. I will go back a little. Anadyavidyodbhava Jiva. What is Jiva? The Anadi Avidya Udbhava Buddhi Pimpitaha Jiva. Jiva definition is the reflection in the intellect that is the ignorance that is beginningless. Prakasho ayamiti iryaha chitaha, and it is of the nature of prakasha, nature of light or sentiency. That's what it is when he calls it prakasha. Atma diyaha sakshitaya pratakstitaha. Now the Atma stands out separately from this buddhi bimbita jiva. That is the jivatma that what we are talking. This Atma is distinctly different from the jiva or the buddhi bimbita. So this is trying. We discussed in the last class. The third entity is generated as a result of this reflection. We will touch on that also a little more today. Buddhya aparichinna paraha sayevahi, and this intellect, this Atma, is not limited by this buddhi. The Atma is reflected in the buddhi, and this buddhi is an ignorant buddhi, and that reflection that comes out in that buddhi is called jiva, and it is of the nature of prakasha or of the nature of sentiency. So that's avidya is anadi, anadya vidya. This beginningless avidya or ignorance cannot be explained. This intellect, what is it? Is a product of such beginningless ignorance. So intellect itself is because of the presence of the ignorance. If ignorance is not there, intellect is also not there, because everything is Atma. The inert intellect has no value at all in the case of a person who is realized. The Atma that he is, nothing else is different from Atma. With that understanding, the intellect would have no value at all in the person who is realized. So this avidya is the source of this creation. So because of this avidya, all these, the creation of the universe and everything happens in our mind, as well as the intellect and the mind of the jivas. Those are all products of this ignorance. So in that mind and intellect, the consciousness Chaitanya is reflected. This reflection of the Chaitanya is called jiva, buddhi bimbita jiva. So the jiva is the reflection of the consciousness in the mind intellect complex caused by the beginningless avidya. That is the single statement, if you want to say, capturing all this. Jivaha prakashaha ayam itirate chitaha. This is also called prakasha. It has the ability to understand, to be aware. Prakasha, awareness. That's a better word to understand. Prakasha is awareness. Atmadiyaha sakshataya pratakstitaha. The Atma is that conscious entity which is observing the thoughts and emotions of the mind and intellect. It's only a witness. It stands separately. It does not in any way mix with this ignorance. Only the reflection happens of the reflection of the Atma happens in it, but the Atma is not affected. That is what the statement says. Therefore, that which is reflected in the mind and intellect, we now call it the Jivatma. Now, how does this happen? How does this reflection happen? That is being discussed here. Chidbimba sakshatma dhyam prasangata tu ekatra vasad analakta lohavat anyonya madhyasa vashat pratiyate jada jadatvam cha chidatma chetasaha. This chidbimba, this reflection of the chit in the intellect, atmadhyam prasangataha, it's happening because of the atma being very close to the intellect. To ekatra vasat analakta lohavata, just like the iron ball in the fire, it is occupying the same place at the same time. Similarly, the Atma and the intellect occupy the same place at the same time. Anyonyam adhyasa vashat pratiyate. So by projecting its characteristic or behavior on each other, there is a jada ajadatvam cha chidatma chetasaha. There is a the consciousness of the Chaitanya is seen in the intellect, and the jadatva or the inertness of the intellect is seen, appears to be seen in the Atma. So these are both projections. There is no real happening there. There appears to be a presence of one characteristic, one in the other, and that is what is called the Anyonya Adhyasa. One projects itself on the other, and being projecting one itself on the other, there is this prakasha happening in the intellect, and that prakasha is of the nature of awareness, and therefore the sentiency, the human body is the intellect is rendered sentient, and from that the human body receives that sentiency through the mechanisms of the mind and the prana and the physical body. So that's what we have captured last class. I will go one more. How to explain this? We saw this model some time ago. When we were discussing the gunas, we saw here we have the three gunas predominant in three different beings. In the first picture here, this is tamas predominant, and the second one is rajas predominant, and the third one is sattva predominant. This sattva guna reflects the atma. The tamas and the rajas does not reflect the atma. Just like if you have a very clean water, there the sun is reflected in that water. But if you have a very dirty water, or if you have very thick sludge like crude oil or something, there is no reflection happening. That represents the tamas more or less. Something similar to tamas. And the rajas is dirty water. It does not reflect anything. But the sattva guna reflects the consciousness, and that reflection is what we have said jivatma so far. So the reflected consciousness is of the nature of prakasha, the sentiency, and that sentiency enlivens the body. So in this tamas predominant, there is not enough sentiency at all. So he is lazy and ignorant. There is some sentience because he also has some sattva guna. There is sentiency in that, but sentiency is kind of slow. When we say sometimes if somebody is not reacting right away, or we say he's like a tube light. So this when it is tamas predominant, there is a little slowness, if you will. In the rajas predominant, rajas absorbs most sentiency. So the whatever is the sentiency that is coming out of the reflection of the Chaitanya in the intellect. Now the Rajas is enlivened by that, and that is why a very Rajasic person is very active. So Rajas absorbs the sentiency, and he is driven to action because of that. In the Sattva predominant person, most sentiency, he does not, he is not lazy per se, because he is engaged in some kind of a meditation or any activity associated with the Atma. And then he does not engage in a lot of physical activity. Therefore, all of that sentiency is available for him to do the meditation, to understand, to experience the self-knowledge that will be helpful. So our goal is to graduate towards Sattva predominant. Now this I'm going to explain with reference to two different objects. Here we have, let us say, the Atma, which is of the nature of consciousness, and we have a rock piece, which is of the nature of inert. Now these two are far apart, and therefore we expect that there is no mutual projection on this, in this case. But if we go bring them together, if we bring the rock and the consciousness together, which is always the case. Initially I showed them apart, it's only for understanding purpose, because the Atma pervades everywhere. So the Atma and the rock, in here, there is no mutual projection. The Atma remains inert. There is no, there is no reflection of the Atma in the rock, and therefore there is no mutual projection. So even in contact with the Atma, the rock is inert. It has no awareness. A rock has no awareness, as we know. And there, if there is a piece of rock in a very dark room and you are there, you experience yourself because of the prakasha, the awareness that you have, because generated by the closeness of the Atma and the intellect which has Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Now the rock being totally tamasic, it has no projection capability at all, and therefore this remains inert. It is unaware, and therefore any inert object does not have the ability to have this mutual projection, except mind, that we will see in the next one. So if you take the case of the mind, see, the rock was inert and the mind is also inert per se, but when they are apart, there is no mutual projection of each other. So Atma remains as a witness, and this mind has no association with the Atma, and therefore there is no reflection. This is only a theoretical case. In practice, it is just not possible to separate out the Atma and the mind, because Atma pervades everywhere. Wherever you are, there is Atma. So with that, now you bring them together. And let us see what happens. Now when you bring them together, there is this mutual superimposition, and this mutual superimposition, the Atma imposing or superimposing the Chaitanya in the inert body, that appears as of the nature of prakasha, awareness in the mind, and therefore you have the reflected consciousness, which is sentient. We call it the Jivatma. Now, as you can see here, in the case of the mind and the Atma coming together, there is a third entity generated. This is what he said in one of the earlier verses. What is that? Nyonyam adhyasam avashat pratiyate jada jadatma chidatma gocheta soho. So it remains, not that one. I'm trying to look at this one. In the 540, Atma Diyaha Sakshitaya Pratakspitaha. So the Atma stands separately from the mind, but still there is this reflection, because it is superimposing its characteristics on the mind, there is this awareness generated in the mind, awareness due to that being so close. The consciousness is of nature of awareness, and it appears to have this awareness in this mind because of the sattva guna. If it was all tamasic, if the mind is totally tamasic, it would be impossible to have this situation. But since it is, it has, every object has reasonable, some amount of sattva. In human beings, it is more than the rock. So the reflection is now an extra entity. It's the third entity, pratakstitaha. It is different from the Atma. So this is of the nature of awareness. That is why even if you are in a dark room, you are able to know yourself that you are there, that awareness is there. So this Atma and mind generate this sentiency in the mind, and that is the awareness, that is the prakasha that he was referring to in the earlier verse. So this is the Jivatma. Now this Jivatma is of the nature of awareness, and it is what we see, what you have seen earlier and will see in the future also is, this per se is not different from the consciousness. It's an appearance in the mind, and it is not, there is no scope for a third entity to be generated just like that. There is only two entities, and there is no scope for a third entity to be generated in real terms. That means it exists as long as the Atma Chaitanya exists. That condition it does not satisfy. And therefore, it's a kind of a temporary, until this body is there, that reflection will happen, and the awareness happens in the body. And so it's a short term or a transient phenomena. And when we die, though the Atma is in contact with the mind, as the mind travels into the clouds and etc., etc., but there is no body for that to develop, to generate that awareness, and therefore that awareness does not happen in between two births, in between the death and birth. This reflection is an extra entity appearing to be there as a transient entity, and therefore that is why we say that Tattvamasi, that this reflection is not different from the Atma itself. Just like if you do like pickle with lime fruit, the pickle still is lime fruit. It is, though it has a different appearance, but in nature, the pickle is lime itself. That is Tattvamasi with respect to the pickle and the lime fruit. So here, what we are seeing, the Atma and the reflected consciousness, the reflected Atma, they are one and the same. It appears as different because of the guna composition in the mind. So that if we understand, the rest of Advaita really falls into place very well. Okay. So the inert mind has become sentient in association with the consciousness. How? By the reflection of the consciousness in the mind. The Sattva guna that has the ability to reflect, that has created this sentiency or awareness. This reflection is called Jivatma or manifest Atma, and the reflected consciousness is sentient, as we have seen, and we have experienced also we do experience this awareness, sentiency in us. That's what keeps us going. And the reflection is temporary. It cannot manifest without a body. So these are all the characteristics of the Jivatma. And therefore, as we will see, as we have seen in Tattvamasi and as we will see in meditation, when he experiences that Atma, we will keep this in mind to relate at that point. So this is basically what we discussed earlier as the Vijnanamaya Kosha, wherein this Atma is reflected in the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Now we will go to having now, come to this point. How do I realize the Atma? The awareness that I have is only a transient one. How do I then realize my real nature, the Atma? I am now satisfied with the reflected consciousness, the sentiency developed by association of the intellect with the Atma. I am satisfied with that at this point, but that has a defect. The defect is it puts me in bondage because of the duality. I see I will engage in karma and the karma phala, and then this transmigration continues. Now, how do I get over this this hump, and how do I realize the Atma? And then here Sri Rama suggests, Guroho sakashadapi vedavakyataha sanjata vidyanubhavo nirikshatam atmanam atmastam upadhivarjitam yajet ashesham jadamatma gocharam. Guroho sakashadapi vedavakyataha. Twice.
गुरोः सकाशादपि वेदवाक्यतः गुरोः सकाशादपि वेदवाक्यतः
संजाता विद्यानुभवो निरीक्षतम्
सञ्जात विद्यानुभवो निरीक्ष्यतम् सञ्जात विद्यानुभवो निरीक्ष्यतम्
स्वात्मानमात्मस्थम् उपाधिवर्जितम्
स्वात्मानमात्मस्थम् उपाधिवर्जितम् स्वात्मानमात्मस्थम् उपाधिवर्जितम्
त्यजेत शेषं जडमात्मगोचरम्
त्यजेदशेषं जडमात्मगोचरम् त्यजेदशेषं जडमात्मगोचरम्.
So now you have to go to a guru in order to experience that Atma. I and you cannot do independently. We need the teachings of a guru. So what will the guru teach? He will teach the Veda Vakyas, all the some of you you studied that the Tattva Bodha and etc. text. So those things the guru will teach, and he will then lead you to the Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi. Those are all the ultimate teachings of the Vedas. So the guru will teach Veda Vakyas and explain them. What does it mean? He explains them. He explains to the student. Guroho sakshadapi Veda Vakyataha. So the seeker then, once he has received the teaching from the guru, now he has to internalize those teachings. Internalizing means he has to regurgitate that knowledge again and again and again. Any doubts that come to him, he will have to go to the guru and clarify the doubts that he have, because now after the month, that is what we call manana. The first stage is Shravana, listening to the guru, the Veda Vakyas, and then internalizing it. How is it affecting me? How is it affecting me now? If I understand this and experience this, how will that affect me? All those things the guru would have taught, and we have to internalize that. Once we internalize those truths that the guru has imparted, then I become my conviction in them becomes so strong, and my thoughts of the anatma keep proceeding. It's not that it is completely gone, but more often you will recall the Veda Vakyas than we call the ice cream that we ate in the previous night or something like that. So the once we start dwelling on it, on that teaching of the Guru, more and more those thoughts appear in me. And once that thoughts appearing is happening, then I am ready for meditation. Because meditation requires a very focused mind, a pure mind, and that has been achieved. And so now he has to meditate on those truths. What is that meditation is called? Nididhyasana. Sanjata Vidyanubhavo Nirikshatam. During meditation, what happens? He sees that this body, mind, and his true self are different. Now I am not able to separate the body, mind, and Atma that I'm really am. I'm not able to support. Now when he sits in the meditation, slowly and slowly, he sees the separation of the body, mind, and true self. These are all we have to take it on the faith here, because we have not experienced it. We can only intellectually grasp, and now having intellectually grasped, now if I sit in meditation, only the thoughts of the Atma are coming and the Anatma are disappearing. And when the Atma thoughts are coming more and more, you can see the difference between the Atma and the Anatma body and mind. And that is what he's referring to here. During meditation, he sees that this body, mind, and his true self are different. Then, the body, mind, and intellect appearing as Atma is not really himself. Now, for us, the body, mind is the self. In our current state, the body, mind is the self. Then when he sees the separation of these, then he starts rejecting the body, mind as self. And his Atma is the self. That the thoughts keep coming again and again. So the intellect appearing as Atma is not really himself. And then he rejects the body, mind, and intellect as not him. Now, this is still in the intellectual stage only, that he is not the body, mind, and intellect. That is still in the intellectual stage. It has not firmly existing him as an experience, but it is happening slowly towards that path. So Upadhi Varjitam Tajet. So the Atma that is shining in the body, the witnessing his body, is different from body. That he understands. And the mind and intellect, he starts rejecting it. Upadhi Varjitam Tajet. So he rejects those body and mind as not himself. He is establishing himself as the Atma, the self. So the seeker experiences in and during this meditation. So what he understood in the Manana, he starts slowly experiencing. And right now, it is only an intellectual knowledge for us that the body and mind are different from Atma. I am really the Atma. I am not the body and mind. That is only an intellectual understanding for us. But he will begin to see himself, experience himself during the meditation. So how do you approach the Guru? In order to achieve what all the Sri Ramchandra has described in this verse, now how do we approach the Guru? We have to approach the Guru in all humility. And that humility, how do we show? Rendering him service. And once you render him service and he accepts your service, there's a bond developed between the Guru and the Shishya, and the Guru wants to teach everything to Shishya, and the Shishya having the conviction in the Guru that he's leading me to my experiencing the self, realizing the self. He learns more and more. He serves him more and more. So this humility increases more and more. No time a knowledge exchange happens if there is arrogance. If I should ask a question, whether with the intention I want to know if you know it or not, then that is arrogance. Then I will never get, because the moment the Guru comes to know that I am asking the question to test the Guru says he is not ready. So the testing becomes, if he gets that impression, his mind is not pure, so he is not. It's not worth wasting time on him. that would be the outcome of that kind of relationship. Therefore, humility. Once the humility is established and the guru sees the humility in the student, then he recognizes that he is ready for this knowledge and he starts giving that knowledge. So the guru will teach Vedavakyas and explain them. Guroho sakshadapi Vedavakyataha. Now we talked about internalizing it, dwelling on it again and again and again. This truth that the guru has taught him, and he meditates on it. Sanjata vidyanubhavo nirikshatam. During meditation, he sees that this body, mind, and himself are different, and he starts rejecting the body and mind. Upadi vartitam tete. The Atman that is shining in this body as a witness, and he rejects this body and hangs on to this Atma more and more. The experiences in and during this meditation, what was intellectually understood earlier, that now it becomes a reality to him. And right now, it is a conviction that I am not the body, mind, I am the Atma. But once you start experiencing in the Nididhyasana, that conviction becomes a reality. He sees that he is experiencing the Atma. Now, this experiencing the Atma does not happen just like that. It happens a few seconds in the initial stages of Nididhyasana, and then he comes back to this association with the body and mind is so strong that it just does not disappear just like that. But if you are sitting in meditation for 1 hour, for 2-3 seconds at a time, you may experience that self a few times, 1 second or 2 seconds or something like that. Now this has to be strengthened, and he has to do meditation for a long period of time, and doing the meditation for a long period of time, these 2 seconds may become 10 seconds over a period of time, and ultimately he lives only in Atma, and body and the mind does not even appear in his mind, and therefore he is said to be realized at that point. So that's a long process. Prakasharupohamajohamadvayam sakrit vibhato ahamativa nirmalaha vishuddha vijnana gano niramaya sampurna anandamayo amakriyaha. Prakasharupo aham ajo ahamadvayaha.
Prakasharupo ahamajo ahamadvayah. Prakasharupo aham ajo ahamadvayo.
Sakrit vibhata ahamativa nirmalaha.
Sakrit vibhato aham ativa nirmalaha. Sakrit vibhato aham ativa nirmalaha.
Vishuddha vijnana gano niramayaha.
Vishuddha vijnana ghano niramayaha. Vishuddha vijnana ghano niramayaha.
Sampurna anandamayo ahamakriyaha.
Sampurna anandamayo ahamakriyah. Sampurna anandamayo aham kriyah.
Aham akriyaha.
Akriyah.
So, if starting with this verse 543 to another 4-5 verses, the Sri Ramchandra is instructing Lakshmana what we should be thinking of in the meditation. We have all these knowledge before Shravana Manana. Now he says that in the meditation, if I sit on the meditation seat, I should imagine myself to be Prakasha Rupaha, Aham Ajaha, Aham Advayaha. I am of the nature of consciousness. I am unborn. Aham ajaha. I am without the second. Aham advaya. So these are all, my characteristics. These are all the characteristics of the Atma. We see this in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, starting from verse 216 to verse 229. Krishna discusses the characteristics of the Atma. Now, if I want to recognize myself as the Atma, these characteristics I should impose on myself. I should superpose on myself. Superpose means I have to, in my mind, I should recall again and again and again. I am Prakashaha, Aham Rupaha, I am Aham Ajaha, I am Aham Advaya, I am without the, I am one without the second, like this, knowable by only by Jnana. Asakrut Vibhato Aham Ativa Nirmalaha, Vishuddha Vijnanagano Niramaya. I am pure. I am all knower. Sakrit is one. Asakrit means knowing everything. I am all knower. I am free from miseries. It is Niramayaha. I am, free from miseries, and I am blemishless. I am bliss. I am unchangeable. Sampurna Anandamayaha Aham Akriyaha. I am complete bliss and consciousness. I am not engaging in any action. I am a karta. So these are the thoughts that we should dwell on when we do when we are engaged in the meditation. What will this do? It will bring to the fore the characteristics of the Atma, and the Anatma, body and mind, they go backwards, they recede. So it strengthens my thoughts about the vritti, they call in Sanskrit. So it strengthens the Atma vritti, it dilutes the Anatma vritti. So this is the meditation technique that he is teaching. So what is this to be? This is a person who has realized can say like that. These are the utterances of one who has experienced the self, or one who has not experienced the self, but he wants to be experiencing it. He intellectually understands them and sets them as his goal. I want to experience the Atma, means that becomes my goal. Whereas for an experienced person, it becomes a statement. It's so either way you can take it. In fact, in the Sthita Prajna Lakshana in the second chapter, Krishna says all those things. And Shankaracharya, he gives his commentary that what is achieved by this realized person becomes the goal for the unrealized to achieve. So today's imagination is tomorrow's reality. Therefore, you're imagining all thoughts associated with the Atma, and you are not dwelling on the Anatma vritti. And this way we strengthen the Atma vrittis, and they coming closer to the Atma. So the seeker must recognize that the mind is a very wonderful powerhouse. What it means is, whatever we think, we become that. That is what the seeker must understand, and this is exemplified by what is called the Brahmarakita Nyaya in Sanskrit. The insect is a captive of this honeybee, and the bee is always, this insect is always afraid of the bee. The bee is seeing, every second the bee is seeing the insect, and the insect being so worried that this bee will eat it away, the insect is always thinking of the bee, and ultimately the insect becomes the bee. Like we see in the caterpillar and butterfly, etc., like that. So that's the example given here. So he's always thinking about the bee, and in thinking about the bee, he finally becomes a bee himself. Like that, always thinking of the Atma, I become the Atma itself. That's the implication here. So the seeker meditating on the Vedavakyas taught by the Guru, he always imagines himself to be Aham Advaya, Aham Akriya, I am of the Prakash Rupa, and all those things. and then he becomes ultimately that Atma. Sadaiva muktoham achintya shaktiman atindriya jnanam avikriyatmakaha anantaparo aham anantaparo aham anirnisham budaihi vibhavatoham hridi veda devatibihi sadaiva muktoham achintya shaktiman.
Tadaiva muktohamachintya shaktiman. Tadaiva muktohamachintya shaktiman.
Atindriya jnanam avikriyatmakaha
Indriya jnanamavikriyatmakaha.
anantaparo aham aharnisham budaihi
Anantaparo ahamahar budhaihi. Anantaparo ahamahar budhaihi.
vibhavito aham hridi vedavadibihi.
Vibhavitoham hridi vedavadibihi.
So now he has to continue this imagination and Sadaiva Muktaha, I am always free, I am never bonded. That thought should prevail more and more. Aham Achintya Shaktiman, I have unimaginable, limitless power. As a Jivatma, I'm limited. There is only so much that I can accomplish as a Jivatma. But as a Paramatma, I have unimaginable, limitless power. Sadaiva Mukto Hamachintya Shaktiman. Now, and then Atindriya Jnanam Avikriyatmakaha. I have knowledge beyond the sense organs. The sense organs can bring only so much information, but I have the knowledge of the entire universe. I have no modifications. Indriya Jnanam Avikriyatmakaha. And there is no limit to my power. Anantaparo. There is no, like the Atma is limitless. I am that limitless Atma. That imagination should be coming to me in the Nididhyasana or meditation. I am that which the knowers always meditate on, described in the Vedas. Budaihi vibhavito aham hridi vedavadibihi. So whatever is described in the Vedas and what is communicated to me by the Guru that is described in the Vedas, I should have that firm conviction that I am really that. And again, this can be either a view of the Jnani or one who has set a goal as this, but having set the goal, you dwell on it and ultimately you reach that goal. That's the meaning. So, this Adhyatma Ramayana, from where this text is coming, it blends both devotion and philosophy together in this text in the Ramayana. So, in describing the disciplined pursuit of Advaita experience, that is, that I am the Atma and nothing else, Rama is describing that he is no other than Parabrahma, and people reach him by disciplined practice. So the message he is giving is Sri Rama himself has achieved that state of realization, and that following that I will be successful. So again, the same thing, they say expressing that either it is what a person has experienced or it's a goal that I should seek to achieve. That those even this verse also we can apply the same feeling there. Now this is again Shankara in his Gita commentary and the Sthita Prajna Lakshana. He gives this instruction. A man of steady wisdom, he makes an introductory statement. What is it? The natural characteristics and attitudes of a liberated person. That becomes the goal and means for the seeker. So it is the inherent nature of a liberated person that he is free from desire or anger, since he sees himself Atma everywhere. Therefore, now I should start renouncing desire and anger. If a realized person is free of desire and anger, I should also renounce desire and anger. And in fact, renouncing desire and anger is a continuous process. It should happen during the Shravana, it should happen during the Manana, it should happen during the Nididhyasana. Like even people who have meditated, they also get angry sometimes. We see that in some of the rishis, for example, Durvasa. So this anger will never leave a person. So it's a continuous practice during the entire stage of the realization process. So the liberated person is expressing that he is of the nature of consciousness, unborn, non-dual, of the nature of knowledge, etc., etc. As he gives up the desire and anger, he is coming closer and closer to that reality of the Paramatma, of the nature of consciousness, Aja, Advaya, etc. And he is of the nature of Ananda or bliss. Now, this is, we are not there yet, but we should speculate and extrapolate that state and contemplate on them in this disciplined pursuit. Whatever I am not now, I have to, in order to get to what I am, I have to practice these various aspects of self-realization, giving up anger, and always making myself more assertive of I am the Prakash, I am the consciousness, I am of the nature of unborn, etc., etc., that we had already discussed. So that should be the entire process of Nididhyasana. So having an intellectual understanding is all right. That comes through the Guru's teachings, and that has to be contemplated and experience those thoughts. The next verse continues with this process of meditation further. Evam sadatmanam akhanditatmana vicharamanasya vishuddha bhavana anyada vidyam achirena karakai rasayanam yat upasitam rujaha. Here he gives, okay, let us read this. Evam sadatmanam akhanditatmana.
Evam sadatmanam akhanditatmana. Evam sadatmanam akhanditatmana.
Vicharamanasya vishuddha bhavana.
Vicharamanasya vishuddha bhavana. Vicharamanasya vishuddha bhavana.
Anyada vidyam achirena karakaihi.
Anyada vidyam achirena karakaihi. Anyada vidyam achirena karakaihi.
Rasayanam yat upasitam rujaha.
Rasayanam yat upasitam rujaha. Rasayanam yat upasitam rujaha.
So evam sadatmanam akhanditatmana. So the seeker now has to meditate on this, like this, the various characteristics that were described in the last 2-3 verses. That's his meditation process. Evam sadatmanam akhanditatmana. He must always meditate on that self. And over time, he succeeds in attaining the perfection. How does that happen? Vicharamanasya vishuddha bhavana. That pure thoughts should be there. And in that meditation, he is inquiring further that he is this Atma and not the body and mind. So ultimately, that knowledge resulting from attaining perfection at once destroys ignorance, he says. Hanyad avidyam achirena karakai. Hanyati avidyam achirena karakai. So in a short time, his ignorance is killed. That's what the ignorance is removed. And an example is given. Rasayanam yat upasitam rujaha. One who is sick, if he takes medication, it clears his disease. Like that, the meditation results in the ignorance to be removed. Once the ignorance is removed, you stand free as Atma. Then the ignorance is thinking them the body and mind. And once that ignorance is gone, the body mind thoughts and imaginations will also evaporate, and he stands free as the Atma. That's a short one. There's not much explanation in there. Now, in order to achieve this, here Sri Rama is giving further instructions of how to sit, where to sit, how to be associated with people, how not to be associated with people. All those further instructions are here. Vivikta asina uparate indriya Vinirjitatma vimalantarashaya vibhavaye dekamananya sadhano vijnana drikkevala atma samstitaha viktasena uparatendriyaha.
विविक्ता आसीन उपारतेन्द्रियः विविक्त आसीन उपारतेन्द्रियः
Vinirjitatma vimalantarashaya
विनिर्जितात्मा विमलान्तराशयः विनिर्जितात्मा विमलान्तराशयः
Vibhavayet ekamananya sadhano.
विभावयेत् एकमनन्य साधनो विभावयेत् एकमनन्य साधनो
Vijnana drikkevala atma samstitaha.
विज्ञानधृक् केवल आत्मसंस्थितः विज्ञानधृक् केवल आत्मसंस्थितः
Vivikta asina. Vivikta asina means seated in a quiet place of solitude. Then now what should we do? The seeker must redirect the sense organs inwards. Uparata indriyaha. See, the sense organs are projected outside and they always have a tendency to go after the external objects. The seeker must train himself to let the sense organs go inside and not outside. This process of arresting the sense organs from going outside and focusing inwards is a very important process, and that is called uparati. Uparati, in sadhana panchaka, in the sadhana chatushtaya, this is one of those. Uparati is one of the practices to be practiced. So what is the uparati? That you arrest the sense organs from going outside towards sense objects, sense organs going towards sense objects, but the sense organs are focused inside. And once you do that, you become firm in your, no additional thoughts are coming, and therefore you are able to focus on the Atma. So the practice of Uparata Indriya is a very important aspect of meditation. And here it is said that by closing the eyes, it is possible to control the sense organs from going outside again. And that is why most of the meditation process, describe or expect, order you to, close the eyes. So then what happens is you have closed the eyes and close the sense organs. No new sense impressions are coming from the outside world. then the thoughts in the mind, they start kind of churning. So the samskaras are the impressions that I have stored in my mind from past interactions with the Anatma universe. Those samskaras start churning in the mind, and when this mind is churned, these impressions, they rise to the surface. They are ready to go out of the mind. That's what it means. So then Sri Rama says it should not be allowed to go. Those impressions have to be merged within the Atma, and if you let them go, you are losing control of the meditation process. That is the advice here for the seeker. So you don't let the old impressions escape the mind, because once you do that, it's like a void being created, and there may be scope for bringing more new impressions that should be avoided. So if they are let out, the energy would be spent through the sense organs. So don't do that. That is what is recommended. So let's analyze those steps here. Sit in a quiet place of solitude, Vivikta Asina, and this is important because we want to reduce the distractions of any outside influences, so that the sense organs are not tempted. We should make sure that sense organs don't get an opportunity to be tempted, and to do that, you sit in a quiet place like a cave or a hill or etc. like that. And this Shvetashvara Upanishad describes the selection of a place is very important. It should be quiet, it should be level, it should be free of pebbles and thorns. Why? Because this could distract me from I'm meditating, and the there are pebbles or thorns that hurt me, and so my meditation is arrested. So you should sit in a place where it is quiet and it is free of any other possible physical distractions that can happen to the body. So the seating is comfortable. In the 6th chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna recommends it's a multiple layers, a layer of grass, a layer of cloth, etc. like that. So the seat must be comfortable to make sure that the meditation is not disturbed. I should not be in such a comfortable place that I enjoy the comfort and forget the Atma. That should not be like that. But say comfortable enough not to be distracted. And also Shankaracharya also says you should not sit for meditation near a water source, because people come to collect water. And if two people start come at the same time, they start gossiping, and then that's a distraction. No, don't do that, he says. And so also the place must be free of wild animals or other people. So those are all the instructions with respect to where you should be sitting. Quiet places like top of a mountain, a cave, etc., are possible locations for meditation. Now, the Brahma Sutra makes a mention of you should be seated during contemplation, at least in the beginning stages. Later on, once I become more, engaged in my meditation, maybe a little moving around may be okay, but at least in initial stages, you should be seated in one place. That way, you are reducing the possible distractions. So if you go to keep moving, something else may come there, and you don't want to entertain that. So it is the nature of sense organs to peek out. Therefore, you should be always focused inside. And then that's what the Kathopanishad says, this, that Brahma has put all our sense organs facing outwards, and therefore they always go after the sense objects. But by effort, now we should redirect sight of the sense organs inwards. So the seeker seated in a comfortable place redirect sense organs inwards, uparata indriya, and the process arresting the sense organs from going outside and focusing inwards. That is what we said is called uparati. So in order to redirect the sense organs inwards, another trick is to closing the eyes. That way you are reducing your exposure to outside objects. And with that, the outside tendencies of the outside objects rushing inwards is reduced, and therefore you are focusing in your focusing inwards is more efficient. So when this happens, when there is no more impressions coming into the mind, as we discussed in the text, these impressions that are in the mind are thrown out, and the contemplation is like churning the mind. And when the mind is churned, these old impressions are churned and they rise in the mind and they try to go out. And Sri Ramchandra advises that you should not let them go out, because if you let them go out, there is an effort on your part and you are distracted to that extent, and the energy would be spent through the sense organs. So don't do that, is advice. These are all just academic interest for us at this point. We are not there to, we are not there at that stage to sit in meditation. Just for the sake of information, we can have this. It's an academic interest. So these impressions must be arrested from escaping out. And that is where he calls it Nirjita Atma. The word Atma is referring to the mind here. So the mind comes under the seeker's control if you practice this. If you don't let these impressions don't go out the sense organs, then out of the mind, then you are in control. And ultimately, those impressions must be absorbed within, and it should be neutralized by the focus on the Atma. So the mind stays in control of the seeker, and the mind becomes purer that way. Vimala antarashaya. So where do we accumulate these the impurities from? From the sense organs, from the anatma. The impurities means anatma thoughts are considered impurities, and the anatma thoughts are accumulated through the sense organs. So the sense organs make the mind impure. That has to be reduced. That has to be eliminated. So sense interaction of sense organs with sense objects must be arrested to purify the mind. And as you are seated in the meditation, you still have scope for purifying the mind. There is a purification of the mind through karma yoga. That is one aspect of it, but it continues all through the steps of discipline practice, sadhana. So the mind is not receiving any outside signals. Every step of the way we should guard against that. That is the instruction. As the seeker practices this over a period of time, mind becomes purer and purer. That means the mind becomes less and less anatma. When the mind becomes less and less anatma, the mind becomes more and more sattva. Sattva, the atma thoughts make the mind more sattva. And the more sattva, ultimately, if you practice that, the more malina sattva or the mixed sattva becomes suddha sattva, only sattva, and that is the state of realization. Means vibhavayet ekam ananya sadhanaha vijnanadrak. So the purified mind begins to be focused on the object the seeker wants to focus on. And what is the object he wants to focus on? He wants to focus on the Atma, and that is what happens by this process of meditation, where he brings his sense organs inwards and does not allow the mind, does not allow the vrittis or the impressions in the mind to be escaping, and he is in control of the sadhana completely, the meditation completely. And in that context, in that state of mind, his thoughts on the Atma are becoming stronger and stronger. So he must focus more on the Brahma or the Atma. Atma samstitaha. He has to sit in the Atma and contemplate on the contemplating on the Atma is called Atma samstitaha. He is established in Atma. This is the only path for the seeker in realizing Brahman, and he should not divert his attention on any other discipline pursuit. This is the ultimately. This is what you need to be. You create an environment where your focus is only on the Atma and nothing else. That is called Atma Samstita. So this path, this meditation is called Nitidhyasana. Now, the withdrawal of the sense organs allows the seeker to focus on the Atma, we said, that is further elaborated in the next verse. Vishwam yadetat paramatma darshanam vilapayed atmani sarvakarani purnachidanandamayo vatishtate na veda bahyam na cha kinchidantaram. Vishwam yadetat paramatma darshanam.
Vishwam yadetat paramatma darshanam. Vishwam yadetat paramatma darshanam.
Vilapayet atmani sarvakarane.
Vilapayet atmani sarvakarane. Vilapayet atmani sarvakarane.
Purnachidanandamayo avatishtate.
Purnachidanandamayo vatishtate. Purnachidanandamayo vatishtate.
Na veda bahyam na cha kinchidantaram.
Na veda bahyam na cha kinchidantaram. Na veda bahyam na cha kinchidantaram.
Vishwam yadetat paramatma darshanam vilapayet atmani sarvakarane. So gradually he should disavow or negate the outside world and absorb the outside world into the Atma. The outside world is nothing but a product of the Atma, and the product has to merge in the source like anything else. When you melt ornament, it goes into the ornament gold. So like that, the outside world is an Atma, which is a product of the Atma itself, like, Bhumirapo nalo vayu kammano buddhirevacha ahankara itiyame bhinna praktirashtada. That's what the Bhagavad Gita describes that. So, and Taittiriya, we will see Taittiriya Upanishad that describes the whole creation process. So, in order to disavow the negate the outside world, I should know what is the creation process. What is the creation process, and then reverse the creation process, and then you, one by one you merge the current state in the previous state. We will see that in the next slide that will come. So this creation has been explained in Taittiriya Upanishad. So Paramatma then enters into the Jagat, remains as the indweller, Antaryami in the universe. That is only for our understanding. Paramatma is always there. The question of Paramatma entering is only for our understanding, because Paramatma entering means he was not there before. That's not the right way to understand. But since the Paramatma is there in every object, somehow we have a thinking that the Paramatma enters there. That is being said in that context, in that understanding. But really the Paramatma is there all along, and therefore that should be understood like that. So Vishwam Yadetat Paramatma Darshanam. So this, where did the Vishwa, the universe, come from? The visible universe came from the Paramatma himself, which is Paramatma himself. Sarva Karane Atmani Vilapaye. So this, all this outside world must be merged or dissolved in the Atma, the sole source of the universe. Sarva Karane. For all, the cause for everything in this universe is the Paramatma. Just like the source, cause gold, is what the ornament merges into. Like that, the Paramatma is what the Vishwa or the universe merges in. That should be the practice in the meditation. So the sole source of the universe. So it has to, the anatma has been merged in the atma. Having thus dissolved the universe in the atma, Purnas Chidanandamaya Avatistate. He is in full form of Chidananda. He has accomplished that state of Chit Ananda, the bliss of the Atma. He will be enjoying that bliss. Veda Bahyam Nacha Kinchidantaram. Now, once we have experienced that Atma pervades everywhere. There is nothing outside. There is nothing outside. When you think of a limited entity, in that limited entity, you can say something inside, something outside. But when you are talking of the Atma, which is pervading everywhere, that you have established yourself in, then there is nothing inside, there is nothing outside. That is what this next phrase says. Na Veda Bahyam Nacha Kinchidantaram. In the experience of this bliss, this Chidananda bliss, he would have no cognition of inside and outside. There is no separation of inside and outside. Everything is Brahma, and there is only one entity, Brahma. Therefore, there is no inside and outside. This is the understanding that he comes to realize. Now, I will stop here after this one slide, and then we'll continue in the next class. I said we said earlier that in order to negate the universe or merge the universe into the Atma, I should know how the universe came into being. That is explained in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Say the Atma was there alone, and he once thought, Bahusyam Prajayeti, I will multiply, I will become many. And when that thought came to him of becoming many, now he has to create that chain of events to become the many. How is that experience or explained rather? Tasmadva etasmad atmana akashas sambhutaha akashad vayuhu vayoragnihi agnerapah adya prithvi pringa oshadayaha oshadibhyo annam annat purushaha. This is the Taittiriya Upanishad, second mantra. In the beginning, Atma alone existed. It then wished to become many. Osyam Prajayeti, it then wished to become many. Just by the power of its volition, it created the entire entity called Akasha. Tasmadva Atmana Akasha Sambhutaha. Because of this volition, he has to realize that volition. So he created the Akasha or the space. It's space or ether. Well, it's one of the 5 elements. So there we can interpret as space or ether. Either way is okay. Akasha should not be interpreted as space. That's what the commentator is saying here. But it's one of the 5 elements, and Akasha is the subtlest of all these 5 elements. So the first insentient element coming out of this sentient Atma is very close to the insentient universe coming from the consciousness Atma. The very first one, that's the Akasha, that is almost similar to the Atma in subtlety. The subtlety of the Atma and the subtlety of the Akasha are not too far apart. Yet the subtlety of the Atma is higher than the subtlety of the Akasha. but they're very close. So the first of the insentient element coming from the sentient Atma is this principle of Akasha. This is a kind of making it a continuity. See, from the most conscious Atma, how does the most inert universe come from? There is a stepwise process. That is what is described in this mantra. So from the Atma comes the Akasha, and then the Akasha is of the nature of sound. And from this, next creation is Vayu. We will discuss this in the next class. This is all time now. So when to explain shortly, from the Akasha comes the Vayu. And then once the Vayu is there, the movement of the Vayu in the Akasha creates the heat. And once the heat is there, when the conditions are in the Vayu, there is the water vapor also, and therefore it gives rise to Agni. The Vayu movement gives rise to Agni, and from the Agni, the water and earth created because of the movement and the heat generated, and the Vayu has some water content in it, water vapor. So that becomes water, and then ultimately the earth is created. So these are the 5 such created elements, and they are called the subtle elements. What is called the Tanmatra, they have only one characteristic. And then from these subtle elements, it comes the gross elements, and from the gross elements come the universe that we will see in the next class.
Ramakrishna, one clarification needed.
Okay.
See, Adi Shankara said that to select a place for meditation, you should be away from disturbances that could be near the water or anything, etc. Now, if you really see historically or even now, the big places like Kashi, Varanasi, Haridwara, even including Sringeri, it's all in the banks of the river. And we see many saints, rishis, and everybody meditating there.
Yes. Now,
isn't it a little paradox there?
What I can say is Kashi, Sringeri are not the places to sit for meditation, number one. And the second thing is those people who are sitting there may have practiced so much, even the outside distractions may not bother them. You and I, for you and me, sitting for meditation in such places is not conducive. And if somebody is practicing for a long time, he or she may be able to continue meditation even in such places. And the third thing is, we don't know what they are meditating on. You see, this is the meditation for the Atma realization. You can sit there in meditation just for peace, trying to get some moments of peace. It is possible. But this is the recommended procedure for Atma Nididhyasana, for Atma realization.
Or we still think that, going in the banks of the river and looking at the nature, and so with all the good serenity, it will give you a calm, nice atmosphere for you to meditate.
You're right in that sense, but if your mind is well under your control, mind is not in control, then a solitary place, it could be your puja room. That's okay. Also, in today's world, they recommend. They don't recommend go to a village forest or this one cave. They say you do in your own puja room, in your own prayer room, and keep it comfortable for you. Don't make it too comfortable to fall asleep, but make it reasonably okay for you to be not distracted.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.